Welcome in, Wednesday edition, Blue Sky Live here with you this morning. Chase Parham, Neil McCready, Clark Ford Studio. Well, I spend a good bit of the show today talking to Baton Rouge radio personality Matt Moscona. We discussed South Carolina with Chris Clark yesterday, so if you missed any of that, you can find that in our MPW digital feed wherever you listen to your podcast or on YouTube as well. Today, LSU. A couple road games right off the bat. Knocking out here, talking to some people who cover Ole Miss's opponents in 2024. We'll do that. We're also going to talk to Corey Clark for about a couple of new things going on at Clark Ford here in a second as well. So, a lot of football stuff.
I'll be taping with Trey Biddy, who covers Arkansas, a little later this morning. So we'll have that. Might make that a Thursday evening show.
Okay,
we'll see. We'll get that to you. Working on a couple of Oklahoma people as well.
Okay, so all that going on. Again, we're kind of getting into a little bit of football preview mode here with you and with the show. So that stuff's coming up today on the podcast. The podcast brought to you every day by Blue Sky locations throughout Mississippi, including Oxford with the Oxford Exxon. Sweet Daddy's locations are in a lot of them. They're up in an I-55. They're out North Mississippi as well. And with those, you get the ribs, you get the pulled pork, the side items, the desserts, and so many different options there with Sweet Daddies and Blue Sky. And again, coming to the Clark Ford Studio, and the Campbell Clinic hotline will be where everyone is partaking as the day goes on.
Yes, both Corey Clark and Matt Moscona will join on the Campbell Clinic hotline. The Campbell Clinic in Oxford now, 2608 South Lamar Boulevard, Suite 102, just across the street from the cottages at Hooper Hollow. The Campbell Clinic provides full-service orthopedic care, everything from sports medicine to foot and ankle surgery to spine and total joint care, pediatric orthopedics, physical therapy, and more. To book an appointment, go to campbellclinicoxford.com or call 901-759-3111. Walk-ins always welcome at the Campbell Clinic, Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. until 4 p.m.
Got a few minutes here. Where it comes in, Willie Mays passing away at 93 years old yesterday. Highly regarded as maybe the best baseball player of all time by a lot of people's stats from a non-steroid standpoint. Very high in almost every category there for Mays. I looked through a lot of photos today, which is what I kind of found interesting. They had a bunch of photo galleries and things from his career, including his minor league days and whatnot there. I feel like my generation, Neil, is probably the first one that's a little disconnected completely from his greatness. For you, even just being, I guess, a decade and a touch older at that point, I mean, what's kind of your immediate thought when I mentioned Willie Mays?
So I never saw him. I guess he probably finished in the early 70s. I was too little to understand, but I knew his legend at an early age. People still talked about him who had seen him play, who would insist that he was the best player they ever saw, and the catch in the Polo Grounds, and all that stuff. But I'm probably just a little too young to fully grasp how great he was.
I kind of like this description here. It's Sammy, somebody, let's see. No, it was Mark. He said, Mays was your dad's favorite player.
Yeah.
That's a really good kind of situation for where we are.
Corey, are you with us?
What's up, guys?
How are you?
Doing great. How are y'all?
We're doing good. We were talking about Willie Mays. You're probably the same as me. You're a little too young to appreciate how much he revolutionized, I guess, the game of baseball.
Yeah, the basic thing I know about him is the catch. That's what in my 43-year-old brain, that's what the over the shoulder catch is what I know him for.
Yeah, I remember seeing like video of him when he played for the Mets at the end of his career, and he was old, and so you didn't appreciate like what he was in his 20s, because apparently he was absolutely incredible in his 20s.
And it also led to the great character in Major League, Willie Mays Hayes. So,
that's a good point. Yeah.
He was the cannon for that, if you will.
Yeah, the Beetle Bug with the Rolls Royce front when he arrives at camp is classic.
Run like Mays, hit like shit.
Yeah.
So what's going on at Clark Ford? I know you guys are kind of doing a Facebook centric thing that is going to be launched a little later today.
We're getting all the details together. I'm gonna get it to you to pin on the board, but basically you have to. We've rebranded Clark Ford. Now y'all don't have to start saying the Larry Clark Studio, but all of our stuff is now going to be called Larry Clark Ford. You know, it's it's amazing with my marketing degree from Ole Miss that it took me a decade and a half to figure out that that made more sense than calling one Larry Clark Chevrolet and one Clark Ford. So we are now Larry Clark Ford. We're going to give away some South Zone tickets and parking pass to one of the hotter games. And all you have to do is like both dealerships and push a couple buttons and enter to win. And we're going to get them to comment MPW so we know that's where that's coming from and get the ball rolling with that. But we're having a great month, selling a bunch of cars. Quick shout out to my daughter, Hallie. She turned 16 today. My oldest is 16, sweet 16. So for no other reason than just buying a car for me because you love me and I'm a great guy. Life's about to get expensive, so baby needs shoes.
Well, happy birthday to Hallie, and yeah, you're right. The expense from 16 to 20 is an escalating exponential thing.
That's right. I have been told.
Yeah, it's
I
true.
have been told.
Whatever you've been told is true. Probably times a couple.
Anything else going on?
No, we're doing this thing in June where we start
previewing the football season.
A football season that is still
2-ish months away.
2.5 months away before they actually play a game.
All right, Neil, let me tell you where I am on Lasso. I just skipped the Beard After Dark episode. It's absolutely the worst.
That's fine. Yeah.
So I skipped it, but that's where I am on the rewatch in anticipation of y'all's Lasso centric podcast.
You can do that.
Yeah, when I guided Laura through Ted Lasso, I started it so she could see it, and once we got to the part where it was going to go off the rails, I'm like,
we can really stop.
You don't really want to. If you want to watch this, we'll watch it, but you're not going to miss anything from a story arc standpoint if we move on. And so we moved on.
Right, Chase, are you a West Wing guy?
Yeah, I am. Absolutely.
There's like a couple of those episodes that you can just absolutely have nothing to do with any sort of the storyline. You can just skip those. There's nothing. So, Beard After Dark was like that. So
they did those two that year. They did that one, which didn't hit at all, and they did Christmas was an add-on episode that was fantastic.
Right.
Those were both just add-on. They needed extra episodes, and they hit a 10 with one and a 0 with the other.
Yeah,
they did one called Ishmael and something else after 9/11 that was politically charged pretty bad. I can't remember yeah. There's one where like there's a tornado in Iowa that's blah. Yeah, but I'm eagerly anticipating y'all's Ted Lasso centric podcast because there's a lot of. I'll probably be in the stream for that one.
It's coming soon, I think.
Sure.
We've given people some notice, right? I mean, and here's the thing: if you haven't seen it and you're still planning to see it, and you don't, then just don't watch that.
The internet's probably going to live, so like you can come back to it in a month, even.
Yeah.
When you catch back up, like it will be there waiting on you. So.
Yeah, it'll be.
I will be that way when y'all do How I Met Your Mother.
I got that probably early next week. So yeah.
I'll probably won't. I've literally watched two episodes of that.
Yeah. I get it.
All right, guys.
Came away with some different conclusions after finishing a rewatch of Ted Lasso. I was much less critical of season 3 than I was the first time through.
Yeah, I've told you this before. It's probably TMI, but I tried to watch it when it came out, but I was going through a divorce, and if you're going through a divorce and trying to watch Ted Lasso, that's impossible. I mean, that's golly, I couldn't do it. So
yeah,
I've gone back after all 3 seasons have been out and watched it. So I got to binge it all 3 seasons.
Yeah, it was different being able to binge it than watching it.
100%.
Waiting for a week. Yeah, it was different. I prefer the binge.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. 662-257-1900. We'll pin that. We'll pin the link later today when you send it to me. And all you got to do is follow a couple of Facebook pages, like a couple of Facebook pages, and you're entered to win tickets. Thanks, Corey. Appreciate you.
See you.
Corey Clark there, Campbell Clinic Hotline. Appreciate his time today. Yeah, I think Corey's representative there, and back to Mays for a second before we get Matt on here in 10 minutes or so, is the catch is the one image everybody has. I mean, it makes a great GIF, the whole deal or whatever. And when your notable thing isn't that you hit 660 home runs,
Yeah.
like
Pre-steroids.
yeah, the 5-tool nature of that's not what you played in the Polo Grounds.
Think about how many home runs got taken from him.
Yeah. Now you get the short porches. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
The alleys.
yeah, it's on a play center field there too. I mean, it's a bit of a deal there. I mean, he was a Giant from 51, 52, 54 to 72. And then as you said, he finished up his career 2 years with the New York Mets there at the end, 1948. Was in the Negro Leagues with the Birmingham Black Barons. I saw Cole Kubelik, I think, tweet a picture of they had his playing card out in front of Rickwood Field because they're doing a thing at Rickwood this week in Birmingham.
Tomorrow, I think.
Is that tomorrow?
I think so.
So yeah, that has been going on as well. 24-time All-Star. 24.
Yeah.
1954 to 1973 in its entirety. World Series only one. 1954.
It's hard to
which
win
is the Bobby Thompson year.
It's hard to win a championship.
Right? No.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's hard to win a championship. I say that all the time. It's very true.
12-time Gold Glove. NL home run leader. 4 times. Mets retired as number 2.
Yeah.
That's a little interesting.
He's one of the 5. If you think all-time baseball players, you think Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays.
Actually,
Lou Gehrig.
If I took a second, I knew that. The Giants swept the Indians in 54.
Okay.
Because of the Indians World Series drought. For that stuck in the back of my mind, but just wasn't at the forefront when I was saying that.
Can you still say Indians, or do we have to refer to them as
they were the Indians in 54? I'm being factually correct there.
I know, just so offensive naming a baseball team.
The Indians had won an AL record 111 games in a 154-game regular season that year.
How many games?
111.
Wow.
Out of 154.
111 and 43 and don't win a title.
Yeah.
Winning a title's hard.
Yes.
It's like the Mariners that year with Lou Piniella and Ken Griffey Jr. and Randy Johnson, and they won
116.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, 116.
And didn't even get to the World Series.
Yeah. Yeah, that was 116. Because the record was broken by the 98 Yankees. They won 114, I think, the Indians record. And then the Mariners in 116.
Wow. Yep. Yeah, he had just said the other day that he wasn't going to make it to Birmingham.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah. So, obviously,
if you watch one clip from anything, a really just neat conversation was, I think it was 2016, is he came into the box and he started talking to Vin Scully.
Yeah, I saw that.
And Mays and Vin Scully, and Scully thanking him and kind of saying he was not just his favorite player, but the best player he had ever seen.
What struck me about that was 2 things. One, wow, that was the first time they ever met. And then 2 was just, once again, how unbelievably sharp Vin Scully was in his late years.
Yeah.
Because Mays had clearly declined some and couldn't really talk as much. And
Doors, you're right here. Just we talk about TV and we're kind of doing this part of the podcast. Your Honor with Bryan Cranston is really good. It is like it's very underrated.
I've never even heard of that.
Thought both seasons. I think it's 2 seasons. I think both seasons were great. I'm surprised it never kind of got into those discussions a little bit for those type of shows. It's really, really good. Yeah. So based in New Orleans, Bryan Cranston is a judge. His family gets into some mess.
Okay.
And he's trying to get out of it. Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff.
So like a real life Atlanta judge kind of thing.
No, not even.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to give the plot away,
Okay.
but no.
Okay.
At least if the Atlanta judge had this go on too, then I got real questions.
Okay.
I got a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, at that point. No, good stuff. Yeah. Thanks, Doris. I'm glad you mentioned that. I actually think I grabbed it off a suggestion thread on Rebel Grove and tried a couple episodes because, I mean, it's Bryan Cranston. I'm willing to give him a shot with about anything for a couple episodes there, and
yeah,
it was worth it.
No, he's terrific. Even in Breaking Bad, which was the best series ever.
Yeah, season 2 drags a little, but I did think they kind of redeem it a little bit on the back half. It starts off a little slow, and I'm like, I don't know. What about Your Honor, not Breaking Bad?
I think going into season 2 is hard in any series. I'd go back to almost any series that was super successful. I bet if you talked to the writers, they would tell you that season 2 is the hardest. Because you kind of pour everything into season 1 because you're not guaranteed a season 2. And then you get a season 2 and you're like, okay, what do we do now? It's probably pretty challenging.
Because you're not necessarily planning on that.
If you're putting out The Office, for example, you're pouring everything into season 1. Everything. Friends, Cheers.
Well, it's one of the more interesting parts of How I Met Your Mother, for anybody who is going to follow this along, is that the show ends up going forever. But early on, the whole arc of the story is, hey, we have to have the character that's the mother of the kids at the end of this. He's telling the really long story of his dating life. Well, if it goes 1 season, we have to have a mother lined up. But then if it goes 2 seasons, we have a mother lined up at the end of season 2. And they have to go through about 4 seasons before they're really safe, where they're constantly introducing mothers that could be the answer if it has to be, but it's probably not where I want to go, and shifting that through. And that becomes a really difficult writing concept as you get into the middle of the season.
Yeah.
Because you're reacting in real time to the ratings and what the networks are saying and going, hey, are we pushing it or are we not pushing it?
Yeah.
We breaking them up? We pulling it back? What are we doing?
Yeah.
And that's
what I mean.
Yeah.
I think you sort of see that. Like in Lasso, you saw the season 2, they had to okay, where do we go?
Who's the favorite here? We're watching Croatia and Albania.
I don't know. I don't know who the favorite here is. There's been some real.
Who's the favorite in the whole tournament?
Like Portugal, Germany.
The usual contenders.
Yeah.
Okay.
Portugal got tested yesterday.
Did they?
Yeah. It was a hell of a game.
If you're into playoffs, Edmonton won Game 5 in Miami. So they head back to Edmonton for Game 6, just to wear everybody there. So talk about a little bit of a tight game probably for Florida in Game 6. You got 3-2. You're going back in the arena.
I'm not going to pretend to be a hockey person.
Yeah.
But Edmonton has now scored 13 goals in the last 2 games. They figured something out.
What I saw that was interesting was, I guess traditionally the Stanley Cup winner gets it, but the Conn Smythe is for the playoff best player. It's got to go to Connor McDavid in a loss, I think. Like, I don't see how you give it to anybody else, even if they lose this thing at this point. He's been by far the best player.
Matt Moscona joins Matt. You've been watching any NHL Stanley Cup finals?
No. Are you kidding me, guys? Come on.
It's the best live playoff event there is, Matt. It's the number 1 live playoff.
I'm with one more human try to sell me on a sport I never watch ever to try to give a darn whenever.
I don't watch it either. And last night was the first night that I sort of turned it on and watched a little bit of it and stayed with it. And I told Chase, if you are passionate about like all sports and you know all sports, that's probably the best playoff sport.
Awesome. I hear that all the time. Not watching, don't care.
Does Baton Rouge have a minor league hockey team, Matt? Is there like a local club?
There is actually. So there was the Baton Rouge Kingfish here for a while in the 90s. Great mascot, logo, all the sort of stuff. An ode to Huey Long of Louisiana political history, who's known as the Kingfish.
Yeah.
And then they went defunct. And then a year ago, or this is maybe the debut season, they just got a team back called they call them the Zydeco, which is a terrible name. They should have tried to unearth the Kingfish, but I think whoever owns the copyright for that or the trademarks wanted like $1 bajillion and wouldn't let them use it. So
here we are.
I love that.
So yeah, when I was in high school, I would go to games at the River Center, watch the Kingfish, and I would, try to get on the spotlight when they play the Cotton Eye Joe and things like that. And that's my extent of caring about hockey.
I love the hat. Speaking of things I care about, that might be my favorite brewery.
So this actually is not the brewery. This is a roofing company of which I am a partner. It's Parish Construction Roofing. But Neil, it's funny you say that because I have reached out and we are trying to do a collab with Parish Brewing, who they do brew great beer. I mean, Ghost in the Machine is his personal favorite. Yeah, there you go. A lot of people know. So yeah, Parish Brewing, but also that's Parish Construction and Roofing.
There you go.
Couldn't tell. How about that? Good for you. Look at you reaching out, branching out. Becoming like a conglomerate.
A lot of football, Matt. Before we do that, I don't think this is going to be where Ole Miss ends up, but tell me about Brady Neal. to you? Because look, it looks a little buyer beware to me. I look at his overall stats, and I saw 64 Analytics made him a top 10 prospect in the portal and all this, but his league only stats kind of suck, Matt.
Yeah, he hit 143 in conference this year.
Yeah,
that's a huge red flag. So Brady Neal came out of Tallahassee, was part of a 3-man catcher class, and he platooned there with Alex Milazzo this year. Milazzo is much better defender. So Neal is an average defensive catcher, and the bat never really came along. Now he's got pop. So I think in maybe 150 ABs, maybe thereabouts of the season, he had 9 homers. So he has pop, which is that dynamic, but struck out in a third of his at bats, and he hit 143 in conference play. There is some buyer beware there, but I think the thing with Brady Neal is, guys, I mean, he was going to want some assurances in his draft year that he was going to play, right? That he was going to start the majority of the games, and I don't think that Jay Johnson could or should give him that assurance. So maybe a smart move to go somewhere, in a portal era that allows to go somewhere where he is going to have a better chance of starting 40, 50 games.
All right, let's talk about the Tigers, because I've never seen a season, and look, it's June. We're going to do 8 gazillion previews like everybody else, but people seem to be just writing LSU off going into this season. I get a lot of that. Like, people talk about Georgia, obviously, and they talk about Texas, and they talk about Oklahoma, and they talk about Missouri and Ole Miss, and Alabama gets kind of written off too. I'll get your thoughts on that, because I know that you and Alabama are tight.
I got a lot to say.
but LSU people either can't get a read on them or go, well, they lost a lot. Their defense sucked. They're nothing to really be concerned about. You're closer to it. What do you think?
I think that when you look at the SEC, there's a pretty obvious pecking order. I think you guys would agree. Tell me if you disagree. I think Georgia, Texas are, if they're not in the playoff this year, something went horribly wrong. In a 12-team playoff, those 2 teams should be there. We all agree?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when I go back and look at historically where, how many teams in the league finish with 10 wins, and how many teams finish in the top 12 nationally going into the playoffs, or into the postseason, I think every year the SEC will get 3 teams
minimum.
And I think that's going to be pretty consistently 3, and in a stretch year you might get 4.
Oh, okay.
Just when you look at guaranteed spots, the G5 spot, I think it's going to be tough to get more than 3.
It's 11, not 12. Yeah.
Right. Well, because the G5 takes a spot, and then the Power 4 champions are all guaranteed spots. So it shrinks the pool of that large spots. So when I look at the SEC, I look at Ole Miss and Bama and LSU and Missouri and Tennessee. I look at those 5 teams, all which fan bases are expecting their team to go at least 10-2 and be in the playoff. And I think 4 of those 5 are going to be really disappointed. Now, specifically for LSU, I think the offense is going to be really good again. Yes, you're replacing Jaden Daniels, 2 first-round picks at receiver, and Mike Denbrock. But the problem isn't on the offensive side of the ball. The offensive line will be great. We can talk about that if you want. Garrett Nussmeier's in his 4th year. He looks really ready, just ready. They've got a buttload of talent at receiver like they always do. They got a veteran tight end. They'll be good on offense. The defense last year was, you all saw it. LSU scored 48 or 49 in Oxford and lost.
49 points in Oxford and lost the game.
Yeah, 55-49. In their 3 losses, they allowed an average of 48 points in their 3 losses. So they were literally the worst defense in program history. How much better can they get? That is the singular question around this team. They're not going to be great defensively, but how much better are they? If they're good enough to beat Ole Miss and Baton Rouge, good enough to beat Oklahoma and Baton Rouge, good enough to go and beat Florida in the Swamp, then they're probably a 10-2 team and make the playoff. If not, then you're probably looking at an 8-4, 9-3 season, and people will be really disappointed.
Yeah, your point's a good one, because look, here it's playoffs or bust.
Should be.
I've said this several times that this is my 17th season on the beat, and in the first 16, with maybe one exception, but probably not. If I'd offered people 9-3 and the Citrus Bowl, they'd have taken it. They'd have booked their room in Orlando, playing the trip. If I offered 9-3 in the Citrus Bowl now, there would be real disappointment. Nobody's going to Orlando. Half the team's going to opt out of the game. I mean, 9-3 and missing the playoff here is
it's failure.
It's failure. I was trying to decide whether I was going to use that word. I've thrown that word at some Ole Miss players and stuff, and they kind of recoil like, no, I mean, I don't want to use that word, but that's what it is. I mean,
and it's a larger scope. It's trying to keep NIL going for 25. There's a lot of reasons for it, but at the end of the day, I do think that is an applicable term.
Expectations are a blessing and a curse, but I agree with you on Ole Miss this year. But what's so interesting, guys, is I look at what Lane Kiffin is doing at Ole Miss and what Brian Kelly is doing at LSU as two very divergent paths of how to build a roster. Ole Miss is all in the portal, the whole portal king moniker and all that stuff, and it may work. I mean, it is impressive what Ole Miss was able to add this year. Brian Kelly has, this isn't new since, if you go back and listen to his opening press conference when he was introduced, he said, we're going to build the roster through the high school ranks. We're going to develop high school talent, and then we'll supplement the roster with the portal. And each year, you've seen him gone from that first year where he had to sign 19 portal guys just to get a roster, from 19 to 14 to this year they signed 9. They're both doing it the way they intend to do it. I have no idea which way will work. We just don't have a large enough sample size in the portal era, and certainly this being the first year of the playoff era, to see which will work. But maybe what Ole Miss is doing this year is the test case that's going to show people, hey, this is how you get to the playoff and win in this era. Maybe not, but I think this year will be fascinating. And that game in Baton Rouge is one that I think ultimately will decide which of the two teams makes the 12-team college football playoff.
And one of the reasons why, as you're saying, you've got these at least 3 teams are going to be disappointed probably out of that group, because I think that's 100% right. I think, but in the 16-team league that we're in now, it's almost going to be just schedule dependent every year. You look at it, one of the reasons why Ole Miss is in the shape is they play LSU, Oklahoma, and Georgia, and they miss everybody else, of that group. Missouri has this really soft schedule relative to everyone else when it comes to this, whereas Oklahoma is screwed. That is a horrific schedule when you look at the Sooners. I almost feel like
Georgia's schedule's really hard.
It is. I feel like it's like a roster thing, sure, and what we've always done, but the little variable over here that's probably going to circle which ones are the favorite, and probably why Ole Miss has been kind of regarded as that third team, is simply schedule based at this point.
Schedule matters, no doubt. And I think a lot of those teams that were that sort of, I'm calling it kind of like that group of 5 teams in the SEC after Georgia, Texas, the 5 teams we talked about. I really think the head-to-head in all those matchups is what's going to play out. Now, guys, we're talking about this in June, and it may come to pass in November where, maybe LSU is a 4-loss team and Missouri's a 3-loss team, and it all sorts itself out. It tends to be how that works out. But I really think the head-to-head is going to matter, because I could see a scenario where LSU beats Ole Miss in Baton Rouge but loses 2 games. Ole Miss and LSU are both 10-2, and by virtue of the head-to-head, that's what the committee talks about, and that's why LSU gets in. Or flip that, right? If Ole Miss wins in Baton Rouge and both teams finish 10-2, then Ole Miss gets in. So I really think that head-to-head is going to matter tremendously for the committee, because all these teams are going to play each other.
If Ole Miss is a playoff team, they're undefeated when they go to Baton Rouge. LSU opens with USC, Nichols at South Carolina, UCLA at home, South Alabama at home, then a weekend off before Ole Miss comes to town. Just for the sake of this question, let's say both teams are undefeated. LSU, Tiger Stadium has been host to some really, really, really big games through its history. I mean, some just a long list of them. This would be way up at the top of that, though, wouldn't it? In terms of,
especially in early October, still, I think that plays a role in it too.
Completely, because you'd have 2 top 10 teams at that point. And Neil, what you just said about Ole Miss needing to be undefeated, I agree on LSU. If LSU drops any of those first 5, if they lose to USC in the opener in Vegas, or if they trip up at South Carolina, by the way, that's an 11 a.m. Central kickoff on the road at Williams-Brice, which can be a tough place to play. I mean, that's a tricky spot right there where it falls.
Ole Miss has to go too.
Ole Miss has that game the week earlier. Actually, they're in Carolina the week before LSU.
Well, maybe that benefits LSU a smidge, and that they'll get a little bit of a breather with Nichols before they go up there. And South Carolina's got to play Ole Miss, but if LSU is 5-0 going into that Ole Miss game, that would probably have a little bit of a feel, not completely what and what, but in 2003, like there's a real famous game in LSU history in 2003 when, of course, LSU won their first championship in 45 years. The Ole Miss game that year, we all know, was a great game. But earlier in the season, at the beginning of October, LSU played Georgia, and it was a top 10 matchup, and LSU won that game, and it felt like a real breakthrough moment for the program. I mean, LSU, it wouldn't be a breakthrough moment if they won that game this year, but it would have that kind of feel of an early October game in Tiger Stadium. That was a day game too on CBS at 2:30, as electric an atmosphere as I've ever seen in Tiger Stadium. Not just for a day game, I mean ever. I mean, you could. Were you there for that game? Yeah. Tyler Green's catch in the back of the end zone was the game winner, 17-10, I think was the final. It was an incredible day in Tiger Stadium. But it would feel like that. Because, guys, I really believe LSU has got to be undefeated going into that Ole Miss game to have any shot at a playoff spot.
Yeah, and Ole Miss is the same way. I mean, if Ole Miss loses to Kentucky or South Carolina, this is not happening. I mean, it's not. Because you still got Georgia and you still got Oklahoma. And, I mean, there's some other spots on the schedule. You still have those. We do this in the league, right, where I keep doing this with Ole Miss, and some of this is I've covered Ole Miss for so long, but for Ole Miss to make the playoff, there's 5 games that they simply must win, and it's Kentucky at home, at South Carolina, at Arkansas, at Florida, and then Mississippi State at home. You have to win all 5 of them, realistically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, through Ole Miss's history, I don't know how many times when they've played 5 games like that, they've won all 5.
Is this the best roster Ole Miss has had since the 1960s?
It's in the argument.
I mean,
I can break down a couple other teams and go, maybe, but yeah, I mean, it's in that realm. And Lane, for the most part, hasn't lost games he should win. There's kind of that thing that, hey, he mostly takes care of business outside of when Auburn was an incredible distraction 2 years ago. I mean, it's true.
But even in that year, they only lost 1 game.
The Egg Bowl.
Yeah, I mean the game at Arkansas again was just so different because it was a senior night, and that was still a talented Arkansas team with Jefferson and Sanders, and they played an elite first half. They played a first half that they would have been in the game with anybody in the league that night. You just had to kind of be there, and Ole Miss was a little checked out and some stuff, but they played really, really well. And then the next week, Ole Miss was that's when the Auburn thing was a major distraction and probably cost them the Egg Bowl.
Ole Miss and LSU both play Florida within a week of each other late in the season. You think Billy Napier is still the safe head coach when both those teams head down there? Because those last 5 games, there's not a tougher schedule in the country, and that's already saying that they've got State and Starkville and A&M. Like, that is a damn landmine waiting to happen throughout the Gators schedule.
The weird thing about Florida this year, and I'm not sympathetic toward them at all, but like they may actually be better this year, and their record just doesn't reflect it. There's teams like that every year, right? You're like, God, they're better than their record shows. If they just gotten the schedule from a year prior or something like that. I think that's Napier in Florida. Does he make it to there? I don't know that he makes it to the final game of the season because the way they finish is so brutal that somewhere along the way maybe they get a head start on the coaching search. It's hard for me to imagine them getting better, doing any better than 6-6 this year. So if you're a 500 team, they got to move on. Now you get Graham Mertz back. Maybe it's a year like Shane Beamer had a couple of years ago at South Carolina where they pulled some upsets and beat a lot of people that maybe thought they shouldn't, and it buys Billy Napier a little goodwill. But that Florida game for LSU is the week after LSU plays Alabama, which is a spot that for a long time we saw Arkansas in that spot, and that's just always a letdown for LSU the week after Bama. Now last year LSU went to the Swamp, or Florida came to Baton Rouge, and that was after Jaden Daniels had been concussed at Alabama, and it didn't I mean, Jane Daniels had a once-in-a-lifetime performance. He threw for 300 yards and ran for 200, basically won him the Heisman Trophy. So it didn't hurt LSU in the spot last year playing Florida, but going to the Swamp the week after playing Alabama is a tricky spot. It's like I look at the schedule, guys, and that's why I say, like, LSU's got to start 5-0, and then they got to beat Ole Miss, because you still have tricky spots where you're at Arkansas, at A&M in back-to-back weeks. We mentioned the Alabama game. You're at Florida the week after Bama. And I still think Oklahoma's tricky. I think that's probably a good team that has a brutal schedule that is going to – their final record may not look great. Like maybe it's an 8-4 season this year in the SEC, but they're going to win a game they have no business winning. Maybe it's the game against Texas. Maybe it's in Baton Rouge against LSU. But I really believe that this Oklahoma team, the final record won't look great, but they're going to win a game they shouldn't. And I mean, if you're LSU, that's why you have to build in that protection by starting 6-0, and includes having a head-to-head against Ole Miss. If you're thinking playoff.
So let's talk about Alabama now that Nick Saban's gone. It's over, right? They're done. That's it. Ball game. Night. It's going to be like Vanderbilt and Alabama battling for the cellar.
Okay. Well, you have to define what that's it. It's over. Night means.
No longer a perennial SEC power.
Define perennial SEC power.
Top 2 to 3 teams in the league every single year.
That saying you're top 2 to 3 is still vastly different from what Alabama has experienced over the last 17 years. Look,
in this era, though, if you're top 2 or 3 in the league every year, you are probably a playoff team every year.
Yeah, you're a playoff team. I think that Alabama has been replaced in that conversation with Texas. By the way, Texas won in Tuscaloosa a year ago.
They did,
and it wasn't even particularly close. Georgia isn't going anywhere, not that I can foresee anyway, unless Kirby Smart leaves. I've had a lot of fun trolling Alabama fans with my Bama is burning segments, just because it's radio and it's supposed to be fun. Whoever decided that we can't have fun on air, right? This is still sports. So I've enjoyed the heck out of watching Alabama fans melt in my mentions and just not understand that I am just completely trolling them in every way possible.
It's fishing.
It's so easy. It's chum in the water. Every time I do it, they just can't help themselves. It's like,
I got fired doing it, so I get it. I understand.
But if I were to give you a very sensible argument for Alabama, my point is, without me yelling and putting flames on the screen and playing O Fortuna and all that stuff and all the clips that everybody loves, it's that Alabama has lowered their standard. And it's not necessarily that Kalen DeBoer is a bad coach. I think he's a really good coach, and I think he'll win games and they'll do really well there, and they'll make it to a playoff, and still have that. They're not going to go 7-5. They're not going to be Vanderbilt. But the days of Alabama just being ordained before every season, it's done, because Nick Saban is the greatest coach of all time. And to maintain that standard, Kalen DeBoer would have to match the greatest coach of all time, which is not going to happen. Guys, I did a bit yesterday because they signed a 3-star defensive tackle named London Simmons, or they got a commitment. I guess you think he's from Mississippi. Maybe you'll know who he is. But and he may be a fine player, but he's just inside of the top 500 nationally. I went back and looked. In 17 years, guys, 17 years at Alabama, Nick Saban signed a total of 8 high school 3-star defensive linemen. 8 in 17 years. Yeah. That's it. They're like Ashawn Robinson and Marcel Darius and Jerron Reed, those dudes that wrecked the SEC, they weren't 3-stars. Like, the only 3-star that defensive lineman Nick Saban signed that you would know his name is Quentin Dial. It's the only one in 17 years.
No, they signed 4 and 5-star defensive linemen. That's how they dominated the league. They were better up front than everybody else.
Everybody. And you can
they literally were better than everybody else. People were like, how did they do that? Where week after week after week they were everybody's Super Bowl. It's like, well, because football's won at the line of scrimmage. It's the storyline on Ole Miss, right? Is if Ole Miss is as good up front defensively as they think they're going to be, we'll trace it back to the night that Georgia just murdered them last November, where Lane kept looking out and told his staff, we got to look more like them if we're going to get to the next place, we have to look like that up front, or it's not going to happen. And
Bama looked like that for 17 years.
They did,
and they're not going to anymore. I mean, you can't lose 40 players in the portal this year, including 3 or 4 5-stars. You know, your 5th-year senior starting center, your all everything safety, your best receiver, and the greatest coach ever, and think you're not going to miss a beat. Of course you're going to miss a beat this year. And the roster will never again look like it has over the last 17 years. So again, Kalen DeBoer is inheriting the best situation you could possibly inherit as far as roster and all that sort of stuff. But it is implausible to think that he is going to maintain the level of recruiting and development and winning that Nick Saban did for nearly 2 decades. And if Kalen DeBoer goes 9-3 in this first year and then misses the playoffs the first 2 seasons, how do you think that's going to sit in Tuscaloosa with those people? And that's what he's up against. He could win at a level that would be completely appropriate for literally any other program in the country, but not following that guy.
No, it's why for the longest time, once it became obvious that Saban was going on this generational Wooden-esque sort of run at Alabama, that people would say, we always would get the Kiffin stuff here, right? About Kiffin's the next guy at Alabama. And I always said 2 things. 1, Alabama's not hiring Lane. And 2, I don't know that that's really the job that Lane would target. I don't know that anybody wants to be the guy who replaces Saban. Because you're not going to match it.
No one's
ever matched that in the next 50 years.
Would he have taken that job if they offered?
I mean, probably.
Yeah.
I think I'll say this, much like it was the deal with Auburn, there were people around him who were like, that's not a good idea. I mean, look, one of the storylines we're going to have this year, I'll let the stream blow up.
It just is what it is.
It is what it is. If Florida's bad and Ole Miss is good, Ole Miss goes there in November. I think they play them November the
22nd.
23rd,
something like that.
Something like that. For some reason, 23rd sounds right, but it doesn't matter.
It's 23rd.
Okay. That whole week, especially if Napier's been let go or if he's clearly bleeding out, I don't mean literally, I mean from a figurative standpoint.
Right.
I wish Billy no physical harm.
What graphic imagery on this Wednesday morning?
Lane's name is going to be at the top of the list. He's going to get asked about it. And if history is any indication, he's going to give answers that say nothing. And it's going to be a big distraction. And in a scenario where Ole Miss is a playoff contender, let's say they won 2 out of the 3 games against LSU, Oklahoma, and Georgia, where they are clearly a steamroller headed towards the playoff. It's going to just drive people here crazy that there's this assumption that Lane would go to Florida, but it's going to have just enough juice to boil. And you know how media is. We're all going to talk about it, and the national people are going to write about it because, A, it might be true, and B, Kiffin's name gets steam. It gets clicks. It does the job that they're paid to do. So that's going to be one of the November storylines that could potentially, sort of shape the season.
He'll tweet a picture of a shark and a gator fighting each other, and we'll all be led to wonder, what does that mean? I hope he does leave for whatever it's worth. Strictly from a selfish LSU standpoint, I don't want Ole Miss being good. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, every league needs its doormats. Go back to being a doormat. I need layups. I don't need a league where Ole Miss is winning 10 games and going to the playoff.
And in a scenario where he doesn't leave, all of a sudden, the jobs that you think he'd leave for, it's kind of shrunk. And all of a sudden you'd go, maybe. And I don't think anyone in the world, Lane included, ever envisioned that he would be here 6 seasons, 7 seasons. But if he's still here this time next year, he's probably here a while. Because the NFL's not hiring college coaches like him right now. I know they hired Harbaugh, but Harbaugh had coached a Super Bowl before.
Right.
They're not hiring college coaches. That's not the route they're going. They're hiring coordinators who can handle one side of the ball. They're hiring people who have been in NFL buildings for years and years. That's who's getting hired there. So if it's not the NFL and it's not Alabama and it's not Auburn and it's not Florida, Lane's not going to like Michigan or something. It suddenly there's just this real shrinking list of schools where you'd be that like the only two schools left that would be real threats if they open would be like Texas and LSU, and Texas is rolling, and the list of people that would be on LSU's list, I would assume, if Brian Kelly were to leave or whatever, would be pretty extensive, and I don't know where Lane would be on that list. He wasn't anywhere near the list the last time they had a hire.
Yeah, Brian Kelly's not going anywhere for a long time. They are, for better or worse, they are financially joined. LSU, I see. It's funny. I've seen some of like the hot seat pieces, and they'll mention Brian Kelly's name. Guys, if LSU were to fire Brian Kelly, so he's owed 90% of the remainder of his contract at any point in his contract. So after this season, hypothetically, they would owe him $68 million, which like A&M will stroke that check. There is a better chance of me becoming the president of the United States in November than LSU buying out, literally, than LSU buying out Brian Kelly. It'll just never happen.
You're young for the White House. You're just not ready.
Former Louisiana resident Monty Williams is getting $65 million to not coach the Pistons as of this morning.
Oh, that's so good. Good for Monty. Good dude.
$65 million.
Don't even get me started. The Pistons are just the single most dysfunctional organization in
Do you spend 5 minutes a week on the NBA, Matt? Even 5 minutes?
Well, yeah. I mean, I love the Pelicans. So, but their season ended.
Yeah.
They played out the string and they made the play in, but their season ended quite before that. But yes, I do love watching the NBA, and I love watching the Pelicans. But they've kind of been a bummer here the past couple of years with heightened expectations. I watch the Pelicans. I do not watch the NHL.
Hey, probably the last couple of things. Nussmeier, how good's it going to be? What are we looking at? We didn't talk about him specifically.
So, I mean, he's got all the pedigree, right? I mean, if you were like going to Central Casting and you wanted to build a quarterback, you'd go, okay, good size, can make all the throws, son of a coach, understands film, good leader. I mean, all that stuff. And he checks all those boxes. He just hasn't played a bunch, right? I mean, and he's also an outlier because in the portal era, guys don't wait 4 years for their chance to play, right? It's just, he's an outlier. I mean, it's like Carson Beck at Georgia, Nussmeier. They come to mind so easily because there just aren't many of them. The big thing with Garrett, especially early in his career, was just the poor decision making. They played Southern a couple of years ago in one of those we're going to beat you by a bajillion games, and Garrett got in late and he threw one of the most heinous pick sixes I've ever seen in my life. Like going toward the sideline, he's being tackled and he just shoveled past the ball into the defender's belly and he returned it for a touchdown. He threw for 400 yards in the bowl game, played a clean game, and he looked awesome in the spring. I get it. It's spring. We'll see how it looks over a 12-game regular season. But he's not going to be Jaden Daniels, guys. I mean, Garrett had one rushing attempt last year, and he played a lot of mop-up duty last year and started the bowl game, played the whole bowl game. He had one rushing attempt. So the rushing offense is going to come from not your quarterback running for 1,500 yards. So it'll look different in that sense, but I think Garrett's going to be fine, man. I think the offense will churn.
What kind of NFL quarterback do you think Daniels is going to be? I think he's going to be terrific. I love the kid.
The thing about Jaden, that his accuracy downfield is awesome. His ability, I think, Lamar Jackson has proven that you can be a quarterback in the NFL that runs, and you can be durable and you can make. And Jaden's bigger than Lamar, and Jaden's got to get some of the tough guy coached out of him because he took way too many hits last year because he just would refuse to go down. It's like, hey, man, live to play another down. That's one thing. But the thing about Jaden that's really going to help him thrive at the next level, I mean, he's the guy, you hear stories about this, like they had to give him his own key card access to the building because he's showing up at 5:30 in the morning every day to go look at film. Like he's that guy. So it's not going to be a thing where you worry about when a guy gets paid, what does he become? And for all those reasons, I think Jaden's going to be great. Now, he's going to an organization that's going through a lot of turnover. New coach in Dan Quinn, obviously new ownership, which I think getting rid of Dan Snyder probably helps there in Washington. But can they keep him upright? Will they put weapons around him to allow him to thrive in a really tough division where you've got Philly and Dallas, who are both really good? And I don't know how soon the success will come, but I'd be really surprised if he weren't a long-term starting quarterback in the NFL. Like, there's a lot of people that comp him to RG3 because both were the number 2 overall picks who were on high-powered offenses that lost 3 games, won the Heisman. There's a lot of comps there, and obviously both going to DC. But, man, I just think Jayden, as an accurate deep ball thrower and his ability to make plays with his feet, just make him vastly more dynamic. I think he's going to be great. The success may not come early for the team, but I think Jayden will be a great NFL player.
Assuming that he's healthy and gets over the knee, what kind of back is Logan Diggs? What should Ole Miss expect from him?
I saw, and I don't know about the knee, guys. I mean, he hurt that knee in the bowl game. That was late. I mean, y'all would know better than me.
I think he's like late September, early October at best here. It's kind of what it looks like.
I saw, so Logan Diggs went to Rummel in New Orleans. So I got to see him, and he played my alma mater. I called the games for them forever. So I got to see him play against Catholic like 3 or 4 times. And there was one game his senior year where like they just couldn't stop him. And this was a team that went on to win the state championship and was really, really good. I mean, they just couldn't stop Logan Diggs. And he was a platoon guy up at Notre Dame, and then he was LSU's leading rusher a year ago. I mean, he was the best back on LSU's team. Now, he's not Quinshon Judkins. So if you think you're replacing Quinshon Judkins with 2.0, you're not. But that's just because Judkins is a special back. But Diggs is every bit an SEC back. He's a 4.5, 5 yard a carry guy. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. Like, he's a versatile, dynamic guy. I don't know what his health is with the knee.
Yeah.
Matt, as always, man, thanks so much for the time. You're the best. Same post game show for you guys this year?
Oh man, do you think T-Bob and I will ever stop doing whiskey and wine? I mean,
hey, our crowd loved it. I mean, they watched and hung out, Matt. They loved it. The one last year after the game, it was fantastic. I mean, I'm sure we helped with some views. People helping people.
Yeah, it's a cult phenomenon. It's like it's the only thing I do in media. Nobody comes up to me and is like, hey, man, I love the show you've done for 14 years and the success that you've had and you're syndicated. And they go, hey, man, I love when y'all curse at the cigar place after the games. Like, got it, thanks. This is my legacy.
Yep. Hey, thanks, buddy, as always. I'll see you in Dallas.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to it, guys. We'll see you.
Later, Matt. Matt Moscona. This is his call sign there in Baton Rouge. What's the numbers?
I have to look
ESPN Radio.
I have to look that up. ESPN. Yes.
Yeah, you can find him after further review.
Pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's including on YouTube, and they're all streamed.
Yeah, I always laugh at people that are like, that show, whatever. I'm like, look at the view numbers on that show. Just look at the view numbers. They're doing really, really well.
And does a good job. I mean, as he said, tries to have a lot of fun on his radio show because it's I was on the week of the Ole Miss baseball series, and I had turned on the YouTube just to kind of follow the segment before and see where they were in the thing. And he sent me a text. He's like, "Hey, running like 5-8 minutes behind. Just be aware." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." When I turned it on, they were doing teen soap trivia. That's what was running 5 or 8 minutes behind was trivia about team soap operas at that point. So. Yeah, it's where they were sitting. But yeah, whiskey and wine after the game. They go live pretty quickly, kind of like we do. They're at a cigar shop there in Baton Rouge.
Teen soaps would be like Dawson's Creek.
Yeah, One Tree Hill, Dawson's Creek, CW type of things. WB, Smallville.
Dawson's Creek was like a guilty pleasure for me back in my Auburn beat writer days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would turn it on in the mornings in the hotel.
The teen anks with the very large vocabularies.
Yes.
Kind of what they were known as there. Yeah, because I think that show debuted for me probably like my entire high school career and like first couple years of college. So like especially from the female set, it was a pretty popular deal there. Jeffrey and I talked about it one day when you were gone. I think on the teen soap stuff on the Thursday. As he said, I'm sure no one will have any notes on this. Spending 25 minutes on that on whatever Thursday morning that was, but it's fine. Made it through.
It's summertime.
It's June, yes. It is the middle of June.
I did Mark Heim's show this morning in Mobile, and I was like, we do this football thing where it's like football because everybody loves football, but okay, so we previewed LSU. We're going to preview them again at media days, and then we'll preview them again. I mean, just how many times can you preview teams?
So
Kyle says, "What's the best running shoe for a very large man?"
Everybody's different, but Brooks Beast would be where I start because it is a very wide shoe that's going to help with any kind of pronation, stability. If you're prone to shin splints, stress fractures as you start running, the bigger thing for you is don't do too many miles at once. Go slow.
Yeah.
Like however quick you think you need to do it, stop and go a little less. Because if you hurt yourself, you're going to suck. It's going to suck. So
mix the running in with walking.
Yeah, but
slowly build the running. But yeah, I agree with the Brooks.
They're going to look like tanks on your feet, but they will protect you.
Try some Asics and
throw Nikes out into every creek you could find.
And then don't be afraid to go the New Balance route. They have some really sturdy running shoes for bigger people.
A lot of people like Saucony, but I've never worn them.
I've worn them some. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah.
I like Brooks and Asics better.
Yeah, I've stayed with Brooks the entire time. I've found one that works, and I don't really deviate much from that. So, Mark Etheridge running a poll this morning. How many intentional walks will Jack Caglianone get today against Kentucky? Less than 3, 4 every time he bats.
Every time he bats.
Well, that won't be the answer.
Should be.
Neil would walk him any time outside of bases loaded where the run would win the game at the end of the game.
That's it. I wouldn't pitch to him. I'd pitch to the other guy. The other guy's a really good hitter, but he's nowhere near as good as
Kentucky and Florida got rained out last night or whatever they had going on there in Omaha.
They had the threat of really bad weather. So they did the smart thing.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah.
Okay. So they never even started. Did it actually rain? I'm just curious. I'm not blaming them. I'm just wondering.
Know. But apparently the radar was such that it would be stupid to stop and start on a game that important.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they did the right thing.
So they'll play
this morning at 10.
The winner plays when though tonight?
They
have to play twice today?
I don't know.
Like what's the schedule now?
You're asking the wrong person.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see this. I saw they didn't play, but once that kind of happened, I didn't notice anything from there. All right, let's see. June 19th. Yeah, so they have to play twice today. That's the only thing that kind of sucks. Yeah. Kentucky and Florida, 10 a.m. Winner moves on to face A&M, and that game will be at 6 tonight per ESPN.
Okay.
Tennessee and Florida State playing at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
That's a winner's bracket game.
That is a Florida State has to beat Tennessee twice to move into the championship.
Got it.
We are down to 4, 5 teams. Like there are
4 SEC teams in Florida State.
That is correct.
Who is joining the Big Ten soon?
What is soon?
Soon.
What is soon?
Year, 2 years.
Okay. You feel real confident about that?
More and more by the day.
With Clemson?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I don't know.
Does that mean North Carolina's going to the SEC?
I wouldn't go that strong yet, but I think.
Would you put the SEC as the favorite if you're setting betting lines on North Carolina?
The slight favorite.
Would you include Virginia in that?
Yeah.
So there's a real world where Florida State, Clemson go to the Big Ten, North Carolina, and Virginia go to the SEC.
And I think it would stop there.
Everybody else is on their own.
Good luck. Have fun.
Peace be with you.
Yes.
And there's a run to the Big 12 because I would much rather Mark run my league than Jim Phillips.
Yeah, and if you told me that there was another one after that, I don't even know that I would think ACC. I would almost think, oh my God, maybe they added Kansas.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I would probably think.
I saw a lot of jokes and stuff, and I get that we jumped the shark long ago. So it just is what it is now. Mm-hmm. I don't blame Euromark for going and all these people for going, hey, we'll just sell the rights to every damn thing. Anything.
Why?
If it brings money in, whatever. We'll live with it.
So we're going to hang on to nostalgia now?
No one's really gotten upset because it was the Outback Bowl and not whatever the hell it was before the Outback Bowl. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and now it's not even the Outback Bowl, right?
It's the ReliaQuest Bowl.
Yeah, whatever.
Which is going to take me 10 years to remember.
Well, it won't matter now because it's a game for teams that didn't make the playoff. So it's like a soccer friendly.
It's been relegated at this point.
Yeah, it has. It's a friendly.
I get it.
I don't know. I think things are happening quickly. Look, if you're the Big 12 and the Big 12 has 20 members? You're almost better off becoming the All-State League. Why not? Especially if they'll pay handsomely for it. Why not? As much as things have changed, just jump in. 4 years later, if it falls apart, you can go back to being the Big 12.
It got officially reported yesterday, but as all you guys know, this SC Ole Miss thing's been dead for, I don't know, 3 months now, something like that.
At least 2 months. It was like to the point where it broke as news.
Well,
I was like, how's this news?
Katz got Keith to say it out loud for the first time. Cool with that.
Yeah, sure.
That's how it happened. And then everybody else that followed was getting verified Twitter impressions trying to make money on Twitter is what happened. Is they all came in and went, hey, I'm going to put it out too because if it gets blown up, I'm going to make $10 on Twitter. That's my opinion.
Okay.
My opinion.
Okay.
But I feel pretty confident about that. Yeah, look, it's just they're going to a 9-game schedule soon, so it is what it is. Both teams didn't want to play it. Hell, SC didn't want to play LSU this year. They've been trying to get out of that game.
Yeah.
So they're just stopping with those kind of things.
I saw where people were like blowing Lincoln Riley up for it, and I thought that was sort of absurdly unfair.
Really?
Yeah. Like, whatever. He's big boy. He can handle it. He's making $1 gazillion. It'll be okay.
That won't change his day, but yeah.
But, like, really? Lincoln Riley didn't get out of the game. Nobody wanted to play the game. I think there's a belief that there will be 9 SEC games. And why add a game that a loss puts you behind the 8 ball before you even get started?
And next year, Ole Miss already has Wake, too.
Yeah. So what was the point?
It's an interesting note. SEC football coaches informed ADs last month that if keeping walk-ons meant reducing their salaries, they'd be all for it. Ole Miss football coach Lane Kiffin, quote, the coaches agreed we would pay out of our own salary, give us less money to our salary, take whatever it costs to have walk-ons, and we'll pay it ourselves. The roster cap number coming down, eliminating walk-ons, you're going to see the Florida State situation in last year's Orange Bowl. The move is more people have started to not play in bowl games so they didn't get hurt to go into the portal. And I'm not even saying starters. I'm saying we had players on special teams, backups on offense, offensive teams. Like, why are you not playing in the Chick-fil-A Bowl and you are 6 Bowl? And they're like, we don't want to risk getting hurt covering a kickoff because we're going in the portal. Kiffin says the coaches told the financial aspect has not been a piece of all this. This is about potential lawsuits down the road. They can use different terms around it, but they're getting rid of walk-ons, and it's a major concern. Lane Kiffin quote there. I will at least give them credit for going, hey, we'll pay it. Shut up. Now, they do have a legal problem with the walk-on term, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Careful what you wish for.
Such is life.
People get angry when we talk about this. But they don't get mad at Lane when he talks about it. And Lane's more forceful than we've ever been. I don't know. I don't know how you – I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how that works. And I don't know that coaches are really going to sign up to pay for 10 walk-ons. That's a lot of money at the end of the day.
It is. Yeah, I don't know.
You know, how's that work?
Yeah, I don't know.
What happens when one coach goes, I really don't want to do that?
Well, then they don't have walk-ons.
Look, Matt makes a great point. Okay. The following teams, their fan bases expect the playoffs. Okay, which means it's the expectation inside the building too. Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama, Missouri, LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee. It's half the league. Is that fair?
100%.
Okay. Let's say I'm right and 4 make it. It means 4, do your math, doesn't. Those 4 teams, what are they playing in a bowl game for? Alabama getting geeked up to go to the ReliaQuest Bowl? I mean, how many opt-outs would Ole Miss have? Seriously.
I mean, I guess I'm playing devil's advocate, but why were you geeked up to ever play in it?
Well, because in the past, it was just a 2-team playoff, and everything wasn't emphasized on the playoff. We had access bowls. Like last year, the Chick-fil-A Bowl didn't have any, quote, meaning, but it was an access bowl. It was hyped up.
But I mean, even 15
something.
years ago. Like,
I don't know.
You played in the Music City Bowl because you played in the Music City Bowl.
You played the Music City Bowl. Now it's all about, that was before the portal.
And it was before players thinking in terms of everything is $1 in a business.
Well, if you're playing at Ole Miss, for example, we'll use Ole Miss. You know you're transferring out. 15 years ago, you were going to have to sit a year. That was going to be your last chance to play a game for a year. Now it's, hey, I'm getting in the portal. If I tear up my knee, or even do anything, what's it do to my portal value? I mean, I'm going to guess Logan Diggs had more portal value before he tore up his knee in the Capital One or Citrus Bowl or whatever it's called, right?
That. Yeah, sure.
In hindsight, he probably wishes he hadn't played. The game didn't mean anything for LSU. Their Heisman Trophy winning quarterback stood on the sidelines because of the draft coming up. I mean, how many? If I told you Ole Miss went 9-3, 8-4, 9-3, and they went to the ReliaQuest Bowl, how many players opt out? Kiffin's never really had an opt-out problem. I think he'd suddenly have one.
Yeah, I agree with that. New thing.
How many guys at Texas opt out if Texas is in the Citrus Bowl?
A lot.
40?
A lot. Looks like Florida State.
I mean, if you're the quarterback there, Ewers, you don't play that game. Not in a million years. You play a playoff game, but you don't play the Citrus Bowl. You don't play the ReliaQuest Bowl. You just don't. Absolutely not. If you're Oklahoma, how many guys opt out of the Texas Bowl?
Yeah.
The Music City Bowl. I mean,
because there's a real chance Oklahoma goes 8-4.
Sure.
So you're out back.
ReliaQuest.
Whatever. Speaking of. But back to Omaha for 10 seconds. It is the most watched College World Series on record through this many games.
I'm not surprised.
Notable teams, good games, good endings, prospects.
Big name teams, prospects.
Yeah. TV product's better. It's faster.
The kid at Florida State's a really good. They have a couple players that are really good.
Game's better.
The shortstop at Tennessee.
Give the PGA Tour credit here. They had to figure out a way in case their man wanted to play to just create some new rules for him. The PGA Tour has created a special sponsor exemption for 15-time major champion Tiger Woods and Woods alone based on his, quote, exceptional lifetime achievement, the tour told its members in a memo on Tuesday night. The sponsor exemption would be available for Woods to compete in the 8 signature events, which feature limited fields, increased prize money, and FedEx Cup points. An 82-time winner on the PGA Tour wouldn't otherwise qualify for those events. He isn't playing enough competitive golf after returning in the tour, blah, blah, blah. But the board approved the sponsor exemption during a joint meeting with the Enterprise Board of Directors on Tuesday in Hartford, Connecticut. Yes.
Yeah, just say Tiger gets to play whenever he wants to.
Yeah. It's literally what they did. They would, hey, if Tiger wants to suit up, he gets to suit up.
There's nobody on the tour that would argue that.
No. Including the players.
That's what I'm saying. He's made them so much money.
Like, whatever player goes, I don't know, he didn't earn it. You're like, hey, any dollar you got was because of that man. Shut up.
I don't even think a player would think that. But yeah sure.
Yeah. He's also not winning.
And if he did, it would be good for the sport.
Yeah.
So, him showing up is good.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them grew up idolizing him. Maybe they get to play with him one day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's easy. See? Hand raise guy exists.
He won that time, didn't he?
He should win a lot more.
Because somebody was sitting there going, hey, we got these tournaments, and he doesn't qualify. So if he wants to play, we can't put
Just let him in. Let him play.
Yeah. Well, we don't have a rule. You create one.
Create one. The rule 17.001
says Tiger can play.
Tiger Woods gets to play.
Oh, it's funny.
All good? Everyone? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, what about future? If there's a future Tiger Woods, we'll let him play.
He gets to play too.
Yep. If 30 years from now, this is what we're saying about Scotty Scheffler, then he gets to play. We'll deal with that when the time comes.
Mm-hmm.
We're not there yet.
I know we brushed on it for a second. We're in the last couple minutes here, but I know we brushed on it with Matt. The Pistons had to convince him to coach, and then fired him and is paying him $65 million.
Mm-hmm.
As we talked about a couple weeks ago with JJ Redick and LeBron's conversation, there's a reason teams suck.
Yes.
Your management is horrid.
Yes.
In every way.
Yes.
I mean, if you're another coach, are you taking that gig?
Well, it's an NBA gig.
Well, I get it.
And they're going to pay NBA money.
And if they fire you, they're going to pay you.
But you're inheriting a roster that's Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey is overpaid. I like Ulster Thompson. James Wiseman's a bust. Isaiah Stewart, nothing. Jalen Duren really made no sense when they drafted him. And it's like Evan Fournier, Taj Gibson, Stanley Amude. It's just a bad roster. They're a million years from winning. And now you've got to pay Cunningham to get him to stay. You got to pay him the max. So they're going to have a maxed out player on a team that might win 25 games.
Oh, they're that bad?
Oh, yeah, they're bad.
What pick do they have? But it's a bad draft.
It's a weak draft. I should know this as much as I've watched draft stuff. NBA draft order 2024. Detroit right now is the 5th pick. They have the 5th pick. So they lost in the lottery. It's Atlanta, Washington, Houston, San Antonio, Detroit, Charlotte, Portland, San Antonio again, Memphis at 9, Utah, Chicago, Oklahoma City, Sacramento, and Portland is the lottery.
Okay. And when is that?
Next Thursday.
Oh, it's that soon?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you interested?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the draft.
Yeah.
It's not a very good draft.
Speaking of max deal, if you want to know numbers, Pacers giving Siakam 189.5 in a max deal.
Yeah, they knew that when they did the trade.
So there's that number.
But good for Monty Williams. God, what a day to be him. I mean, what a day.
Living that Jimbo life.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't heard any reports of Jimbo trying to jump off a bridge or anything.
Yeah.
He seems to be doing well.
Yeah, if you're Monty Williams, you're doing the Ed Orgeron thing. When they called him in there and said, "Hey, you're out," and he said, "What door would you like me to walk out of, and when would you like me to walk out of it?"
Oh, with a smile.
He said, "Hold on a minute, you're paying my full contract?
You're going to let me go? Oh my God, yes, thank you.
Yeah. I love you.
Tell
me where you want me to go."
This is like getting out of jail early and getting supplemented.
Yeah. I don't owe the fine, and I'm out of jail. Hold on, whoa.
And not only that, and here's a wheelbarrow full of cash.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's live
$65 million.
It's a good day to be Monty Williams.
It is. We've been kind of peripherally discussing her. Cameron Brink of the Sparks went down with a pretty serious, it looked like, knee injury last night. So see where that goes for the rookie there in the WNBA.
Is she a rookie?
She's not a rookie?
I don't know.
I think she's a rookie, yeah. Now you're making me question myself, but I thought so. All right. We'll be back to tomorrow. We'll talk to Jeffrey tomorrow morning. Neil said he has an interview with Trey Biddy. We'll discuss the Razorbacks there at some point as well. Thanks, Matt Moscana. Good to talk football here with you guys and with him today as we move forward. RebelGrove.com. Got a little bit of a catcher update from a portal standpoint up on the site. It just sort of is what it is right now. So you can head there, check it out, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.